One advantage of using several plywood boards to make the tabletop is that I don't have to route the grooves. I put in place the strip I will use to guide the sled, and I push the next piece of plywood board against it, and I screw the board to the table frame. I will use this plywood panel to make the base of the sled. I center it on the saw disc, and I mark the groove position. I measure the distance to one side, and I mark where to put the guiding strip in this board. I put the strip that will guide the sled on the marks. I hold it with spring clamps, and I screw it from the other side. I check how nice it slides in the groove. It has trouble to slide, so I apply some wax to the strip and in the groove. And now it slides much better. I screw this provisional piece of strip in the side of the base that will be behind the saw disc. I must make sure I don't put any screw in the way where the saw disc will cut the slot. I use this piece of strip because I don't want the wooden panel to separate in two when I make the first cut. I make the first cut, but I don't cut all the width of the wooden panel. I measure the diameter of the saw disc plus 2 more centimeters, and I mark that distance from that edge in the wooden panel. Now I put this strip on the panel, with the face that looks to the saw right on the mark I made. This strip will be the fence of the sled. I screw it in one end. Because the sled is a bit small, I loosen the provisional strip to have some room to use the square. I take my time to make sure that the fence and the saw disc are at a perfect 90 degrees angle. I put the sled upside down, very carefully, making sure I don't move the fence, and I screw the other end of the fence. I make sure it is at 90 degrees, and I put 2 more screws. Like that, I have a couple of screws to each side of the slot. I remove the provisional strip. And I put there another strip. This is like the one I have in the fence. I screw it in one end. I move it until it is parallel to the fence. And I screw it. Now I can finish to cut the slot. When I use the sled, I don't want the edge of the wooden panel to reach the saw blade. So I mark the maximum advance I want to give to the sled. And I put there one screw to block the advance of the sled. And it looks like it works. I glue a couple of wooden blocks on this piece of wooden panel protruding below this side of the fence. And I clamp them while the glue dries. Just in case, I put a couple of screws, making sure they are out of the way of the saw disc. and I cut the slot in those blocks. And I check that with the blocks and with the screw I put before to limit the advance of the sled, the saw disc doesn't protrude this side of the sled. My very first crosscut using this sled. It is very easy to adjust the cutting line to one side or to the other side of the slot. And there it is, an easy to make, nice and clean crosscut. I only need to apply some more wax, so that it slides even better. You can find all my woodworking videos in my YouTube channel, and if you like my videos, remember that you can subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.